and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm doing my 15.4 jungle tier list. So if you enjoy content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. There were a couple of changes this patch. The buffs to Elise, the buffs towards Teemo, the nerfs towards Diana, a nerf towards Warwick, mostly focused on top lane, with some other adjustments generalistically. We also saw nerfs towards most of the tank items, so that has shifted some champions' power down. Let's get into it. So the D tier is going to consist of relatively similar champions. Maokai, well, actually, in fact, I've removed two, and that is Brand and Ambessa. In Ambessa's case, she had really seen a decline in pick rate over like the last couple of patches, mostly because of she's a relatively new release, and new releases spike in most roles and then will settle into their main role, which is top lane in this case. In Brand's case, he has been heavily nerfed out of the jungle. Most people just don't really want to play him anymore or have alternatives, and he has basically just fallen out of popularity here, so he has also dropped off the list. The remaining D tier champions are the likes of Maokai, who still heavily underperforms in solo queue. He's still relatively viable and competitive, a low econ clear, like a CC clone jungler, is relatively valuable within that environment. He was also a flex pick, not so much anymore. Like, he still has some level of viability in his two other roles, but top lane Maokai has definitely declined in power, thus mostly meaning incentivizing Maokai jungle. In the likes of Silas's case, he has declined in pick rate once again. They gave him buffs like middle of last year, I want to say. They amped up the Q damage to monsters from all the way down from like 30 to like 100% now, so he is doing full damage with his abilities. The problem is he has lost the likes of Night Harvester. They pushed him onto a more bruiser focused build, incentivizing health purchases, with the W healing having health scaling on it now, and that really hurt jungle Silas. It makes him less volatile, and he needs that volatility to really get the kills, so he can get money to clear his camps faster, basically. And yeah, he's definitely struggling a bit more now with the general shift towards his new build. Gragas is in an unfortunate spot, as he is one of the, he's the lowest champion, which is perceived as still being one of his main roles as being jungle. Like Silas and Maokai, they're obviously niche junglers for the most part, but Gragas feels really unsupported in the jungle at the moment, which is very unfortunate. The champion's definitely struggling a lot in his current spot. Top lane Gragas still very viable. I'd recommend playing him there if you enjoy playing Gragas, and mid lane support are definitely viable roles for him in specific scenarios, but jungle Gragas definitely the role he's struggling in the most, and definitely not a pick I'd really recommend playing at the moment. In Lily and Rengar's case, they're not bad champions, they are just very hard to pilot. Picks I would never really recommend for mid elo. If you're very comfortable with them, you can still play them, but obviously they require a huge amount of mastery and game understanding to really function as picks, which will get more value out of the champions higher up than them. But yeah, if you're comfortable, definitely do recommend playing them. They are very viable in Elite at the moment. Moving on to the C tier then, we have the likes of Kiana, a champion which is definitely declining in pick rate again, but the buffs towards her Q, once again, I want to say middle of last season, combined with the electrocute buffs of more recent, she did end up gaining some pick rate here. She isn't terrible, you can definitely make her work. Her clear isn't awful, it's unhealthy, and you can definitely be invaded, and it's not like a Z clear, for example, like one of these assassins which can clear really quickly, basically compensating for the lack of CC. Kiana, in her case, does have CC, and it can be valuable. Her damage can be high if you are snowballing, but you need to get the ball rolling, you need to be very comfortable playing with champion, and if you're not, it's just not a pick I'd really recommend playing. In Zed's case, he's definitely not performing that well at the moment in both mid and jungle for the most part. The pick could probably do with a bit of a buff. Obviously, he is very frustrating though, which is why they traditionally don't buff Zed. His clear, still very aggressive, still one of the fastest in the game. If you like fast clearing junglers, then Zed could be the champion for you, but I'd only recommend playing him if akin to Kiana. You are very, very fast at clearing, and you're very, very good at piloting the champion. Talia, also another pick which kind of akin to Gragas, has definitely felt less supported in jungle, more like a secondary role. Mid lane Talia is still a very decent champion at the moment, but jungle Talia got over nerfed. It's fine, you can play it if you are very comfortable on it, but still a pick I'm not really going to recommend. Sejuani stays within the C tier. The nerf towards Unending and Heart still do directly affect her this patch. She doesn't perform well in solo queue. She is a low econ, low agency jungler. I would recommend picking other things like if you're looking for other tank options for things like Nunu, Amumu, stuff like that can definitely end up being better, as they are traditionally easier to play in Amumu's case and have more damage, more carry potential. Sejuani's case, you're very reliant on your teammates doing a lot. She's a pick which I could definitely see like people being comfortable on in higher ranks, but in lower and mid elo, I'd recommend taking things into your own hands and definitely playing a champion with a bit more agency. Obviously, if you like sitting back and just playing around other people, then she's still a functional champion. She's just weaker now. The direct nerfs towards tank items did affect her. Same goes for Skarner, another champion which is very good and elite and has a bit more agency than Sejuani. Obviously not a solo carry monster, but does do decent damage, especially if he gets his stacks going. And is opting into things like Sterix, for example, that is going to give him some direct damage. But the pick, alongside its direct nerfs, has obviously suffered with tank items being nerfed this patch. Heartsteel and Unending are two of his core items, and that does leave him in a weaker spot. He, I believe, will drop out of priority in competitive. He was already on the decline, but yeah, with the direct nerfs towards tank items, will probably end up dropping down even more. We might see some other things on the rise, which is good because he was overcrowding the top of the jungle meta for a while in competitive. Other champions here are the likes of Rek'Sai, who has just been underperforming for a while. It's a pick which, if you're comfortable on it and you're a one trick for the most part, you're still going to play. A pick which I'd recommend picking up at the moment? No, just not in a good enough spot. She has lost a lot of damage. We are no longer seeing the old lethality build, which was like what she used to go like a year back. Proudest Claw for the most part, and then we saw some like Yomu's variants, but now we're on to like Stridebreaker variants. We've been on that for a while. You can still play like lethality iterations on Rek'Sai. It's just not as performant, I believe, at the moment. I think Halo Blade should probably still be viable, but Conqueror was core for a while, and it's probably, I imagine, I haven't actually looked into Rek'Sai as of recent, going to be her main keystone. So yeah, just recommend the Conqueror with Inspiration Secondary, and then like your Stridebreaker, Bruiser Core, and that will traditionally be the way you play her. If you do want to play her, I'd recommend looking into it. She might have some builds which are like hidden strong. I just haven't looked into the champion for a while. Poppy is going to be within my C tier. She got directly buffed for jungle when they did a bunch of nerfs to her support, primarily because that was like gaining a lot of popularity. The main thing though is that she's just weaker in jungle. Like, that has been her weaker role for a while. Both both support and top had been outperforming it. But it's fine. Like, it's a good counter pick. I wouldn't really recommend picking it outside of like R5, B4, B5. Maybe like you can get away with like an R4 kind of a pick angle with it, where you do see a lot of the draft already, and you can definitely get a lot of value out of her W and out of what her kit can provide. Moving down is Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix has been in a bit weaker of a spot for a while. I'm pretty sure he did a direct nerf of 10 damage on the Q combined with some evolved W nerfs, which have left the champion in a lot weaker of a spot at the moment. Probably is another pick which could do with being buffed, but yeah, obviously a bit frustrating. Has very strong isolated assassin damage, and I still think the pick can be viable in specific spots, like your Xin Zhao's, for example. Like, Kha'Zix, I'm pretty sure is well known as a counter to Xin. Moving on to the B tier, then we lead off with Echo, who actually should be towards the high end of the B tier. The buffs to him this patch were nice. 10 Q damage is a good buff for Echo jungle. It allows him to clear faster, it allows him to trade better, and that is a nice change to gain. You will gain some level of seconds in your early clear. Obviously, with all junglers, I'd recommend trying their clear out in practice tour and getting it down to a very solid time before taking them into ranked. But he's doing a bit better now. The change was nice. Other champions which I have within the beta include the likes of Talon, who is a low beta option. He's a bit volatile. I would recommend watching Chaos if you're planning on playing Talon, but he is a hard to pilot jungler. He is a bit unique in the way he functions as well, but definitely can be rewarding if you are willing to learn it. Shaco, also another champion I'm going to have towards the higher end of the B tier. The buffs towards Dark Harvest and Electrocute were really big for him. Electrocute, Halo Blades were really big for him, and he is definitely performing a lot better now. Sits as a very deserving high B tier option. Could honestly be bumped up to the A tier if you're very comfortable on the pick. He is a hard to pilot champion after all. Kindred is decent. the prohibiting factor, like if this was a high elo tier list, she'd be like a high A tier option, but this is mostly focused on mid elo, so Kindred sits as more like a high B tier option here. She is a hard to pilot jungler. You need to put a lot of time into her to really get a lot of value out of the champion, but she's decent at the moment. Like if you're very comfortable on it, you'll get the results. Belveth sits within the B tier. She is fine, like another champion, kind of akin to Kindred, early game aggressive invader. If she can get the camps, get the advantages, and you pilot the pick well, she is a decent option at the moment. Once again, not mandatory, only really recommend if you play a lot of the champion in its current state. Hecarim is another fine champion. Like a lot of the beta options are good if you are comfortable on them. If you're not comfortable on Hecarim, wouldn't really recommend playing him. He's very volatile. He's not in one of his like more stat sticky states. You do need to play him and like pilot him well. Otherwise, oftentimes you'll just find yourself falling like short within fights, not really doing like enough to have value within drafts. And if that's the case, I'd recommend just looking towards other champions. Pantheon is on the rise. Obviously, we've seen a lot of it in competitive now at this point, which is good to see. I think jungle is one of Pantheon's stronger roles. He clears relatively fast. The buff towards his Q damage towards monsters is nice. It's like 5%, but it's a decent change to have on the champion. It allows him to just be more functional within the role. Point and click CC. Decent ganks, obviously, with the ultimate. Once you get access to that at level 60, he's a pretty solid option here. And if you're looking for an AD champion within your pool who's a relatively strong early duelist and has like, honestly, he's decent like mid and can be functional late if you get enough gold. Obviously, he's not a late game champion. You're not playing Pantheon for its late, but like early to mid, he is very solid within those kind of areas. Lee Sin, still the most popular jungler in the game and still very solid if you pilot him well. If you don't pilot him well, then you're probably not going to be playing the champion at the moment. He's not in like one of his god tier spots like your Gore Drinker Lee Sin's when it was like really strong. He's just a decent option and can be something you opt into every once in a while if you're very comfortable playing the champion. If you're not, I wouldn't really recommend just like randomly picking it out. He has a very, very high skill ceiling and requires a decent amount of games to like really excel within solo queue. Zyra has been a bit on the surge for popularity again. She has obviously seen a lot of play in competitive. Her clear is very fast and it's about how you use that downtime after clearing that really makes the difference between Zyra players. Like if you can harass out laners and you're like poaching away camps, this champion can be really a really effective AP option. It is a bit harder to play, like that space in between it's just a different play style, and that does like create some unique circumstances which you're not going to be able to just mirror from one jungler to another. But if you are very comfortable playing Zyra, she is a very decent option at the moment. Once again, fits in with a lot of the like the B tier options here. Ivan, I'm actually going to have towards the lower end of the B tier. The pick isn't doing as well at the moment. He's once again fine. Like you can pilot him. Like if you're comfortable piloting him, he can be a decent option. He is a bit lower agency. Obviously, he fulfills like a more supportive role within the team, which makes him less recommendable as a mid elo option. I think if you're very comfortable playing around a specific individual, he can be decent and he's always a good champion to have within your arsenal. He's just a bit unique, and that can definitely dissuade some people from playing the champion. If you're comfortable on him though, yeah, definitely give him a go. Rammus is a good counter pick, like late draft counter pick. The problem with that though is you're as jungle oftentimes just picking early, and it makes Rammus a very hard to recommend champion at the moment. He's very simplistic. He's a very clear game plan, which can be good for beginners. Like I think for like a gold and below champion, Rammus is great. Like I think Rammus is a really chill champion to play. Just learn the core concepts of the game and then go from there. Mid elo, he's relegated towards the counter pick, and he's basically non-viable. High elo, like people don't really play this champion. I don't think I've seen him almost at all this season, which is unfortunate because I think it's nice when you see some level of variety, but Rammus just isn't that popular in his current state, and he's definitely in one of his weaker spots, which he has been in. Zac sits as a B tier option. He is fine, once again. If you're comfortable piloting him and you're like able to itemized depending on what you need within the game, he can be a really solid option. The biggest difference is obviously Korea goes a lot of Pro to Belt, and the West goes a lot of Sunfires. It really comes down to what fulfills your playstyle and what you feel like you need within the game. Trundle is a high B tier option. The one prohibiting factor of this champion is his clear speed. It's not great, but if you get access to items, he is in a pretty decent spot again. He's just been gradually on the rise. He's kind of like in the background. He's a very stat-sticky, simplistic champion. He's not very popular, but he gets the job done a lot of the times, and he's like Nocturne in a way, where he's gonna have one of those higher win rates, but isn't always the champion for the job. However, Nocturne I do have in the S tier. I think Nocturne's generalistically a bit better. He feels like a really core. He has a really clear job of what he wants to do within the game, and it is very valuable at the moment. Trundle, though, is just a stat-sticky, anti-AD, anti-tank option, which can be good to whip out every so often. Doesn't need like that many games whatsoever to just like have good knowledge of the champion. He's very simplistic, one of the easiest picks to play in the game. Graves could probably be bumped up to the A tier. There's not a compelling reason to. I think he is hard to play, and he's not a pick I'd ever really recommend for people to like learn to like be a climbing option. When he's good, he's a good pick to learn because he is very he's a very, very solid jungle just to have within your arsenal. A good AD ranged option, which has oftentimes a bit more scale, like how would I describe it? Kindred has a bit more scaling through her marks and like her skill. Graves is just generalistic gold scaling, and when he's strong, he's a really solid option. Obviously, the nerfs towards Yomu's for ranged champions combined with direct nerfs towards his Q has made him a bit weaker, but if you pilot him well, he's still a very solid option. Definitely a high B tier pick at the moment. And then the other two champions I have here are Vi and Karthus. In Vi's case, great point and click CC, obviously popular because of Arcane, and she gets the job done. If you're very comfortable playing Vi and you just enjoy this kind of like dive-in playstyle, isolated target, she's pretty solid at the moment. Sees a decent amount of competitive, so you have a lot of games to look at and kind of get a feel for the champion and what you want to achieve on the pick. Karthus is one of the hardest champions to play in the game. That is what it comes down to. If you can clear really well on this pick and you really are like piloting it and doing what you need within the game then he is a very oppressive option. Bad Karthuses will ult poorly, they won't land their Qs consistently, they will clear badly, and that is the real difference of this champion. Like, if you can pilot it well, he is an incredibly valuable pick to have within your arsenal, and most people will struggle to find answers to this champion, especially if you like play it a lot within solo queue. Definitely a champion I'd recommend you pick up at some point. He is going to take a lot of time though, and if you're not comfortable playing him, just you don't need to. He's not mandatory at the moment. Dropping down are going to be Udyr and Mundo. In Udyr's case, he lost a bit of power from Ending Despair being nerfed this patch, and it just drops him down from the A tier to the B tier. If you're comfortable playing him and like you're an OTP, he's still a good option. He does have a he is a decent skill floor, so you do want to put some games in to really get a decent amount of value out of this champion. In Mundo's case, he lost power because of Heart still being nerfed, and he's just a bit weaker. I'd say jungle is still his better role at the moment, especially for mid and low elo, where, would I say that? I'd say it's actually probably better in high elo, and like to an extent sometimes in mid. Low elo probably top lane, where you're just not going to get punished as much, but lane Mundo's not in a great spot at the moment, so definitely recommend trying him within the jungle. Honestly, you can get value out of both roles if you are able to just scale up and be this late game tank, which does a huge amount of damage. If you can't get to those points, he will feel pretty bad to play. He's not a consistent way of winning games, but if you can secure what you need to do within the game, you continuously clear and are effective at getting a lot of CS and XP within the game, he's a pretty valuable champion at the moment. Moving on to the A tier, we have a couple of picks moving up, Darius and Yorick. So Darius has been strong for a while within the jungle, and honestly, I'll have both of them, bump both of them up to the A tier at the same time. Both these picks have been good for a while. They've always supported good win rates within the jungle. In Darius's case, a lot of people go Yomu's and play like a Yomu's Edge of Night variant, I want to say, where you want a bit more burst of movement speed to like gank lanes more effectively. That combined with the fact that he's an incredibly aggressive clear speed, and if you can maneuver around your camps utilizing bleed to maximize your clear speed, he's a very effective option. He does a lot of damage. He's very oppressive early. Good objective taking, very good invade potential as your damage is incredibly high and your 1v2 potential is also very high, so you can invade on sides and often like top lane for example, and like 1v2 jungle top if you're able to get your bleed stacks off. I think he's pretty slept on as an option. In Yorick's case though, he has had a massive surge of popularity. I don't specifically know where it came from, like I've been aware Yorick jungle has been good for a while, but it was one of those things which was hard to promote because just people weren't really playing it, so it's mostly one tricks, and sometimes that can lead to inflated win rates. But he has tripled in pick rate and has maintained his win rate. Yorick jungle is probably overpowered long term, like he is probably an S plus option. He's still not the most popular. Actually, I'm going to bump him up to the S tier. I think for mid and low elo, Yorick jungle is probably overpowered and will get nerfed at some point if it continues to see the levels of pick rate increase it has done. Yorick as a champion does fall off quite aggressively the higher up you go in MMR. People play around Maiden like better. People understand your vulnerabilities as a champion, and that can definitely like prohibit him from being viable the higher up you go. But I think Yorick, for honestly all the way up to like high diamond master, is an incredibly good and effective way of just climbing at the moment. So definitely recommend giving it a try. If you're not a fan, you don't need to play the champion, but it can definitely be something which, if you're very comfortable playing on, is a very, very good way of climbing. Continuing on with some of the other A2 options, the likes of Gwen and Jax are other top laners which are viable here. Jax is a great anti-auto attacker champion, which can be very valuable as like a counter pick to like Xin Zhao, for example. In Gwen's case, if you can get to your like 3 item spike, she is one of the strongest champions within the game. So really use that as a win con, and then that can be a really effective way of climbing with the champion. Mordekaiser sits as an A2 option. He's great in isolated 1v1, decent clear speed, very stat checky, decent objective taking. His ganks are a bit weaker, but like if you have Shadow Realm up, you can still obviously kill people quite comfortably within gank opportunities and always just isolate a single target. So yeah, I'd say he deserves a solid spot within the A tier. Bio and Shyvana are low elo monsters. They are incredibly oppressive the lower down you go. The higher up you go, they are basically non-existent. There are not many Bio and Shyvana players whatsoever in like Diamond Plus. But yeah, like once you go Diamond Plus, I'd say these picks are like B tier and then like Master, C tier, and then yeah, kind of non-viable the higher up. But yeah, Bio, very, very like stat checky, simplistic like kit, but it has some level of skill to it. Like, oh well, I say skill, like barrier to entry rather. This champion isn't just a pick up and play and like expect to win option, but it relies on people just not understanding how to play against it correctly to get value. In Shyvana's case, it's just about clearing and scaling. Once you get access to your dragon form and you're just fighting with your dragon form, that is where the real value of the champion shines. Viego and Wukong, actually Viego probably sits towards the lower end of the A tier, Wukong towards the higher end of the A tier. Viego definitely got hit a lot. Well, Viego got hit by the nerfs, but he was already weaker than Wukong in the first place. He's now just more of a low A tier option, arguably high B tier. In Wukong's case, I probably overrated the nerfs to him. He actually still maintains the spot as like a high A tier option, and if they nerf some of the S tier, he can probably reclaim a spot up there. He's still a decent AD option to have access to within the jungle. 2 more AP options in the likes of Fiddle and Lilia. Lilia, great as an anti-tank option into comps which have pretty poor lockdown and a lack of range, like they're mostly melee. Lilia is a great pick to play within the game. She is a great answer to the likes of Skarner as well. Definitely deserving of like a mid 2, probably not a high A2 option. I'd say she's more like a mid A2 option. In Fiddle's case, he's a very niche pick. Like, he is mostly played by OTPs, but if you're very comfortable with the champion, you'll get the results. He has a very powerful ultimate, and that can be a very effective way of winning games. Teemo is back up to the A tier. The champion received direct jungle buffs this patch, and he's doing a lot better for it. He's obviously very low elo skewed, and getting to those late game points where shrooms can oftentimes dictate entire fights, it can make him very powerful. Plus, the lower down you go, people won't sweep your shrooms as effectively, and you will more consistently get damage down. Eve, I actually bumped up to the B tier. I just missed her. She benefited from direct buffs from like 2 patches in a row. Combined with electrocute buffs, she's back to being a viable jungle option. So definitely if you're an Elise main, I'd recommend trying her again and picking her up if you're able to find consistent results with her. Elise is also getting bumped up to the A tier. The champion really benefited from the W changes this patch. They nerfed W human form, 10% AP ratio down, 20 flat damage down at like full points in the at full rank of the ability, but they gave her a massive buff to her spider form W, amping the attack speed and like halving the CD on that ability. She really benefited from these changes and is definitely like really viable as a jungler again. As a support, she's doing even better now. She'll probably get nerfed in 15.5. So if you are very comfortable playing Elise, definitely a champion I'd recommend playing at the moment, but then yeah, just be aware she might get nerfed relatively soon. Diana drops down to the A tier. The champion received direct nerfs this patch to her jungle, and yeah, it did hit her. She gained some direct power back through like abilities, but the jungle modifier on her passive went down quite aggressively from like 300 to 225%. It was a pretty hefty nerf, and yeah, she just clears slower, but the buffs towards her like abilities obviously helped her in mid lane, which is what they were going for. So overall, yeah, the changes landed just about right. Moving on to the S tier. Actually, no, one more. Volibear. So Volibear wraps up my A tier. Very good point and click CC. Very, very clear game plan on how he wants to play. Stat checky. Great dive potential. Really, really good. Just general jungler, just to have within your arsenal. Yeah, I really do like Volibear in his current state. So my S tier options. We lead off with Kayn. He's pretty good. Both red and blue Kayn are in better spots. They have directly buffed blue Kayn a couple of times now, I believe, bringing it up to like viability. So if you're playing into like very squishy comps, definitely opt into blue Kayn if you get the opportunity. Red Kayn, definitely just in general doing decent at the moment, tends to be more mid and low elo skewed. So definitely recommend trying that more when you are in lower ranks, where you are more consistently going to get rotations of your abilities down and playing into like those tankier team comps. Nunu is going to drop back down to the S tier. I overshot. I shouldn't have put him in the S plus tier. He had a really inflated win rate on the true damage patch, and I presumed that Nunu was just blatantly overpowered and was going to get hotfix nerfed. Wasn't true. The champion just ended up going back to relatively similar to where it was before. Direct nerfs towards some of the tank items like your Unending Despair and Abyssal do impact him to an extent this patch. Not hugely, but yeah, he does drop down towards like the lower end of the S tier. Xin Zhao, Jarvan are your standard AD bruisers. They're so like simple, just like lock in and like click and play options. Jarvan has great lockdown. Xin Zhao has great isolated dueling potential, combined with just being a very good they're like jack of all trades champions in a way. Like they are easy to play AD boosters, which you can play in most drafts and have some level of value. Some of the more which one do okay, now all 4 of these champions have really powerful traits with them. Nocturne has one of the strongest ultimates in the game. He is very stat checky. He has just clearing till 6 and then having a really clear game plan in just ulting a lane and then like burning summoner, like getting summoner spells, like killing laners, like playing around like your strongest member. He just has such a clear game plan and is in an incredibly decent spot at the moment. Definitely a pick I'd just recommend having within your arsenal. He's just been good for such a long time that he's always going to be a pick, which to an extent I will recommend if he stays in his current state. Master Yi benefited from buffs he received recently, and in general, when they did that reshape to try and push him back to being better in low and mid MMR, he's just doing decent here at the moment and is definitely a pick I would recommend playing if you enjoy that hyper carry playstyle within the jungle. If you enjoy more traditional, just standard ganking junglers, he doesn't really fulfill that role. Probably a pick I'd recommend avoiding in that case, but if you're looking for hyper carry, Yi is a great option. Amumu is my recommended go-to tank at the moment within the jungle. He's very simple to play, great powerful ultimate, good damage for a tank, decent clear speed. Yeah, and just his ease of play, like he is very, very simplistic, and just having that level of simplicity makes him really valuable. And then Warwick received a nerf this patch, but it doesn't really matter because he is still a very strong jungler in his current state. He is incredibly low elo skewed, so just keep that in mind. He's not a pick I'd recommend playing if you are looking to go all the way to like Grandmaster Chali, for example. But if you are looking for a pick which will climb you all the way through to at least Diamond, and then maybe you'll run into some like traction once you get to Diamond, then yeah, Warwick is a great recommendation for it within that space. It also has some level of individual agency, pretty early game skewed though, so just keep that in mind. My recommended picks of the patch are the likes of Nocturne, Mumu, Warwick, and Yorick. I would recommend trying all of these champions, but if you're looking for something just a bit more simple, then Jarvan and Zinzao are perfectly fine options. Those are my thoughts for the 15.4 jungle tier list. Thank you guys for watching. Tune in when this video goes live to my Twitch, and you will see me playing scrims against Vigal V2, so that is also something which I probably should have mentioned earlier on in the video, but who cares. Plus the fact that I'm also about to hit 1,000 subscribers, so thank you for that. I'll probably make a video or mention it in my next one, and yeah, have a wonderful day. I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.